Thank you for joining us, Bill.
Great. Thank you, John. Hey, it's 2020, and wouldn't you like to have this over with? I'm sick and tired of 2020, but what about 2021? Where are we going there? What I want to do now is talk about three issues. COVID-19 is going to drive the economy, and that will generate an economic forecast. We've had a big political change, and I'm going to make the point that it is not as big a deal as many people have been hearing. And finally, I want to talk about the labor shortage that is going to dominate the next decade. With that, let's talk about what's going on in the, hold on, let me, there we go. What's going on in the economy right now? We had the sharp dip. We are having a brisk rebound, but a partial rebound. So a sharp but partial rebound. And you know the sectors, hospitality, travel, restaurants, and so forth that are down. But the critical issue is what is going on with COVID. So we are in a third wave. I like to look at hospitalizations because the case count varies with how much testing we do. Death count is better now because the hospitals, doctors and nurses, bless their hearts, have learned how to keep more people alive with the disease. So the closest to an apples to apples comparison is hospitalization. We seem to be in a cycle where when things are really bad, people become very, very cautious, and then the pandemic dwindles down, and then people relax and it goes back up. I believe that this cyclical pattern will continue until we have a medical advance. And looks like we're pretty close to a medical advance. We've had good news the last 2 weeks about vaccines. There's massive vaccination going on in China and Russia. And I believe in 2021, we'll have substantial vaccination. By the middle of the year, we'll be in pretty good shape. And by the end of the year, we'll be in what I call full vaccination, which it doesn't mean everybody. Some people will have medical contraindications. Other people will simply be unwilling to be vaccinated. But we don't need 100% participation. If we just get substantial portions of the population vaccinated, the virus will not be transmitted. But I have to caution you, this is kind of speculative. We don't know exactly where it's going. So what does this mean for the economy? Well, I've got good news for you. I've got my crystal ball. We'll take a look at this crystal ball. And here's the forecast. We are seeing the economy, I believe, will return. The pace of growth from quarter to quarter will be a little bit stronger than it usually is, and that's a good sign, but we have a good bit of ground to make up. If you let your eye follow the previous trend, we're not quite getting up to that previous trend. By the end of 2022, there'll be some permanent damage to the economy because of labor supply issues as well as the lack of capital spending at certain points. So that's what's going on in the economy. Some of you may have heard that we've had some major political changes, and some of you are probably very, very worried. Some of you are probably very, very happy. And I'm going to say, if you're extremely worried, extremely happy, nah, that's not what's going to happen. I've read many articles that lay out the Biden-Harris campaign promises and what that will mean for the economy. Here's an important lesson. The statement a campaigning politician makes is crafted to win votes. It is not sworn testimony about what is actually going to happen. It's a campaign statement. You may remember George W. Bush running for office saying he does not believe in nation building. Well, what have we been doing in Iraq and Afghanistan? Or more recently, you may remember Barack Obama, as a senator running for president, said the White House had too much authority and some of White House power should move back to Congress. Well, when President Obama was in the White House, that didn't seem to be a very big priority. So I take campaign promises with a grain of salt. It is likely, I think, that the Republicans will have a majority in the Senate and the Democratic majority in the House will be pretty thin. A few Democrats break off and they will not be able to pass major legislation. What does that mean for what we're actually going to see? We're going to There we go. We're going to see, I believe, a stimulus bill. I do not believe it will stimulate the economy because we're not in the kind of Keynesian recession where a bunch of extra money helps the economy, but it will provide relief to those who are most hurt by it. We would have gotten a stimulus bill before the election, but I think there was a difference of opinion about who should get credit and what the political advantage of that bill would be. But after the election, I'm pretty sure we'll have a relief bill. Labor policy will not have a major change, but working around the edges on all the judgment calls, the regulatory agencies will be favoring unions. So plan on that. International trade. The Biden administration is not going to return to the globalization, pro-globalization that we had previously, but I believe it will be less bombastic, less erratic, more stable. And in terms of business planning, that is going to be a positive. And we'll eventually get an infrastructure bill, not right away, but over a few years, a few months, second half of 2021 or into 2022, I think the Democrats and Republicans will come together on an infrastructure bill. They have some differences of opinion about how that should work, but I believe there's enough pork to go around that they'll be able to satisfy a majority in both houses. But it reminds me of my first year in a bachelor pad. One of the things I learned is that when your pork turns green, it's kind of dangerous. We may be headed for that. So anyway, that's what I think we're going to see from the political side. But now I want to add up some numbers. And this is a population chart. And I have been adding up these numbers for some time using the abacus my father brought home from Japan after the war. This chart, U.S. data, shows the growth, the change in the population of the working age people, 25 to 64. And you see the big growth decades. Every dot is a decade. The big growth decades were when the baby boomers entered their working years. And then the millennials, who are the children of the baby boomers, helped sustain the growth. But at this point, the baby boomers are exiting their working years and the millennials are already in. The following generation is relatively small. So look at the growth that we'll have from the year 2020 to the year 2030. That will be the lowest growth in American history since the Civil War. The lowest growth in terms of number of people, not percentage, the lowest growth of number of people of working age since the Civil War. This is going to have major implications. Wow. What I'm showing you is a forecast that the Census Bureau made a couple of years ago, but it's even worse than this number shows because immigration, foreign immigration into the U.S. is much lower than it's been for decades. And the chart I'm showing you now only goes through 2019. There was virtually no immigration in 2020. So we're going to be in a tight labor market. Those of you in Oregon, it's a little bit better here because we have so much movement from other states of people coming in. Oregon is still attracting people. So it'll be a little bit milder here in Oregon, but it's going to be an issue. So if you're running a business and you have a vision of expanding that business, where are you going to get the people? Or maybe you have a vision that you could expand the business through greater productivity. You don't have to add workers, just make them more productive. Well, you need to look at your fellow business leaders because they're going to be trying to poach your employees. Employee retention and employee recruitment will be the key factor in the coming years. So the key point I want to make is watch what's happening with COVID to see the direction of the economy. Do not expect major changes in the economy from the politics, and work on employee retention and recruitment to lay the groundwork for a successful decade of the 2020s.